Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to RFK Refugees podcast. Ted here, John here. We are back. We are live. We have returned, made our triumphant return to the airwaves to talk DC United, a popular DC podcast, as reported by the New York Times.
There have been requests for T-shirts, and that just might happen. Who knows?
That might happen. I've resisted it. The context of the story I felt like mattered, but I think maybe I will let the people decide there. Should we do T-shirts of that? So we do T-shirts of that, people. But John, welcome to our friend. It's feel like it's been so long since we've talked, and we've been talking through text. We've been talking through messages. We've been talking about the team. We've been watching the team. We've been paying attention. We just haven't been talking about it.
We've been watching from the wings of the wings of the theater versus in the front. But yeah, we have been. It's you would normally ask how was your weekend, but it's just there's just too much of time in between. So suffice it to say, we're happy to be back. We're happy to be live broadcasting this. We're happy to not be just simulcasting our Zoom call. Ruther Bryan is back. So if you're watching live, if those of you are watching live, you see it looks a little bit better. I mean, aside from the fact that my face is huge because I am on my laptop in a hotel room in Indianapolis, but so much that I want to bring to you the goods that I am hardships were afforded to make this happen. We're doing it.
Yeah, this will be a jam-packed show. So please, people, get your questions in, get your thoughts into the Twitch chat, on Twitter, however you want to do it if you're watching the show, or X, I guess. That's something else weird that has happened since we have come back.
Zeet at us. Just zeet to us, and then we will re-zeet it.
Oh man, the world is stupid. Anyway, let's get in. Let's just jump right into it, John. I think that we've owed the people some response, maybe some further discussion. We've talked a little bit about it. I think we've all had some time to maybe collect. So if you have not been aware, if this is your first show, first of all, welcome.
Weird timing for you to have done that, but welcome.
Weird timing. So, but if you're not aware, there was another incident involving Taxi Fountas, this time with a teammate, Nigel Robertha, which was the genesis of us deciding to take a hiatus. And I think we've had some discussion. There's been, I think the initial decision was based on a lot of assumptions for us. We've learned a lot, about the incident, what happened. I do not, for 1 second, before a certain biggest fan decides he wants to jump in, I think not 1 second regret what we did. I think DC United made the right move. They made the only move that they can make, which is to tell Taxi Fountas goodbye. Taxi Fountas, of course, accused of racial abuse, accused of using a very, very awful word towards Nigel Robertha after an altercation after a 4-0 loss to the Revolution. Both players were placed on administrative leave. Apparently, Robertha did hit. First, it was reported assaulted and then hit with a foam roller. So that changes a little bit in my mind. A little bit. I mean, I'm sure those things maybe are hard, but I don't know. Just didn't seem right.
They are, but
yeah,
not the most. It wasn't a bat. It wasn't a deadly weapon.
It wasn't a punch. I guess when you hear assault, you assume he punched him or did something.
I think the initial sort of readout of how this went in our heads was much different than I think maybe like the subsequent reporting by Pablo Maurer. Basically, what the story became is that the accusation is that it was said on the field. They had to be separated. They got back to the locker room. I believe the conversation restarted. Nigel would have hit him with the foam roller, and then I think they were separated. That's in our minds. There was like a fist fight, but that's not how it went.
Not how it went. Of course, Robertha accusing him of using the word afterwards. MLS finding that credible, but also again, it is another situation similar to what happened with the Miami game. He said situation. In this case, it is 2 strikes, you're out. I think we've had some speculation as to whether did he actually say the word? Do we think he actually said the word? I've ultimately come to the conclusion that at this point it doesn't really matter. What matters to me is Taxi's actions, particularly going after Robertha in a game 4-0 that was terrible all around. Taxi did not shower himself in glory, so I really don't understand why he was choosing or singling out Robertha on the field as a player he was trying to go after. I think we've all thought about, there's maybe a word he might have said. My response to that be, well, if that's the word that he said, that sounds very close to the word that people have thought he has used. Maybe you make a mental note of that and don't use that word again, particularly in a heated situation. So the team did what I think they had to do. I mean, it's all situations involving racism are horrible. This is also a very different. Once you have a situation in the locker room between a teammate, that's it. In my opinion, it's it. It's over. The team, of course, nothing official. I don't know if we've gotten anybody that really has asked about that. The timing of this was very weird. Obviously, Stephen Goff going away to the World Cup. There really wasn't, I think, a lot of the coverage, but we saw the team, and apparently in a show of solidarity towards Nigel Robertha, wore black armbands in the first game. I don't think we got anybody to really ask them about it, and maybe if they did, they maybe said they couldn't talk about it. But that was sort of an interesting thing. I would love to maybe get a follow-up or have somebody go back and say, now that it's all over, what the black armbands, because that was a curious situation.
You're going to get that for sure. That now that the player is gone for the press availability this week, you can be sure that the first 5 questions for Wayne Rooney will be Taxi Fountas related. So, I think that's without a doubt. I just wanted to sort of similar to Ted. I think that there's there's not a guarantee of what was said. There's not we'll never have conclusive proof of anything. I think to Ted's point, I think you lose the faith of the locker room with situations that happen like this. I think there is what is you gotta look at, like, what is the PR component, what is the in locker room component, and then what is the business component for the team for making the decision. And there are very few arguments for not making this move. It would have been much better, and I think this is Wayne's point when he was aggravated about this. It would have been a lot better if this had happened faster and the team was in a position where they were able to actually remedy the hole in their roster.
They still can.
They can with a free agent or an unattached player. Certainly makes it a lot more difficult than it would have been had happened earlier, but you can't really. Things had to go through the process they had to go through. The player is going to find another team.
He apparently already has. That just dropped out. He's going to Turkey, so
okay.
He's gonna be fine. Yep. I think is the most important part. I think there was an Instagram post from his wife. Sorry, John, I don't mean to interrupt. I'll let you jump back in. But there was an Instagram post from his wife with, I believe, saying freedom. So I think after this incident, I think the relationship between the club and the player had already soured. Team was already looking to shop him as well. And again, I would also add to anybody out there who is saying, well, why are they believing this? Why I believe this? I mean, to be honest, the team gave him the benefit of the doubt. They gave him the benefit of the doubt when they welcomed him back into the team. They welcomed him back onto the roster. They welcomed him back into the locker room. They gave him that second chance. And in my opinion, he blew it, regardless of what happened. He blew it. So it's on him, in my opinion. It's not on Robertha. It's not on DC. It's not on anyone else but Taxi Fountas.
Yep, I think that about wraps it. I think there's not too much more to say. I think you can look at, and I'm unable to look at both the display and sort of what this means for the club. I guess you have it in different. So we can look at the transfer window, and then talk about it in that way.
Well, what it means for the club, obviously, I have to go back and catch up. I think the team still does have. They gained an international slot from him, so they gained an international slot. Obviously, they gain a designated player slot. I don't think any of the moves, they already made room for another player. They had an international slot, or at least I think 2 international slots, with Lewis O'Brien being gone. And then, so I think for all intents and purposes, they are, and I think, they also, I think Samake is still technically an international that they can move up and down or loan out. So they still have, I believe, the flexibility from an international roster slot perspective for one. And obviously they have a DP slot. Now, again, transfer window's closed. Everyone talking about Neymar going to Inter Miami or going somewhere in MLS. That wasn't going to happen unless PSG released his contract or set him free. Even then, I think there were some issues. You have to be a free agent before the window closes. You can't just release a team on a free. So there's a lot of stipulations. And
he went to Saudi Arabia anyway. So the end there. Yeah.
And anyone also saying that, MLS would have found a way to bend the rules. I'm like, they would not have done this, because the amount of uproar if MLS had allowed some team to go in, pay a transfer fee, bring in Neymar after the window, you would have uproar from existing teams, owners. You would have uproar, Manchester United, Liverpool, all these teams would be teams with much, much more bigger implications, particularly when, FIFA's also trying to get a Club World Cup going and convince these teams to do it. You would have had so much of an uproar from those fans. Not going to happen. Yes. Does MLS maybe look the other way on some things? Sure. I'm not going to sit here and doubt that. I think that may be happening right now, but I don't think they would have gone this far on that. Anyway, let's get to the window. Incoming. I'm just going to read through the list. We got incoming Eric Davis, Jose Ferrado, I think is how you pronounce that, and Gabriel Pirani. And the outgoing is Victor Paulsen, and of course, Taxi Fountas. We talked about Taxi. We won't talk about him. Let's talk a little bit about who's incoming. The team went out. They needed a left back desperately. It wasn't going to cut it with having Pedro Santos run into the ground at age 35. They picked up 32-year-old Eric Davis. He actually
spring chicken 32-year-old Eric Davis, whoever.
I mean, yeah, but I've seen plenty of players at 32. I think this is a stop. It's a stopgap. I'm not saying it's a full. It is definitely a stopgap. I think he was not with a team, so I don't think they played a transfer fee or anything.
I believe they have a contract for this year, and then I think a club option for 2 years.
Yeah.
So very, very clearly a stopgap in that way.
Yeah. So this
is
the
penalty. So his first touch for the club was a converted penalty and a loss.
And he was real quick on that visa, man. That was that must have been in the works for a while. I don't know if he has, maybe the fact that he's Panamanian and also has already had an approved visa to play on the national team. Maybe that helped. I don't know. But it was very curious how quickly that all got signed, sealed, and delivered.
We need a State Department employee during transfer season. That's what we need to happen. Come on the show. Explain this to us, please.
Yeah, so Eric Davis coming in, made an appearance in this game. I don't know if we got really much of a look to really gather much from him. Great service on free kicks. I think maybe that's the best one we got out of that. So
confident enough to take the ball before other players on the team in the penalty shootout. So.
Yeah, there you go. So, and I like the service idea because we have a star Benteke that needs goals and he needs service. So, certainly something to watch there. Jose Ferrado, he was from Club Atletico Independiente, I believe in the Peruvian league, if I recall correctly.
A league we all follow very closely and watch every game, every week.
Watching the sizzle reel, he looks like maybe a little more. He's certainly, I think, a little bit on the height area. He seems more like a Benteke. A guy, look, basically, if Benteke goes down, we've got Eric Hurtado and Nigel Roberta, and that's it. So this was an idea to bring in somebody. I'm willing to bet this was not envisioned that this guy would really see the field other than just maybe to give Benteke a rest while giving you an opposing player up top that can win headers and be a little more agile on the ball.
Who's the forward that played 2 seasons ago? He was like the end of the season replacement, unattached player. He was tall. I think he scored 1 goal. Do you remember the guy I'm talking about?
Oh, you talking about was it Ahaje? No.
Nope. It was a guy. He's now playing in like some remote Eastern European league. Man, he was very tall. I think he was South American. I'm trying to remember what. Anyway, the goal was to not have this guy start games. I think is probably like you want to have him available as a bench. Do you think he scores more or less goals than Michael Estrada in his duration time here?
How many goals? Michael Estrada was like he was terrible, but pretty prolific. I'm going to say less goals.
I am also going to say less.
Yeah. He was that was the oddest thing. I think he was the golden boot leader when it was very clearly from any other perspective. If you just watch the stat, you'd be like, why are they getting rid of him? But if you watch games, you're like, oh yeah, that's why they're getting rid of him.
There were a number of discussions on the DC United Discord where there was points per game bandied about. I'm like, I know, but you watch the games, right? You see this guy. You're watching the same games I am, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
a player that maybe those players are very clearly stopgap filler. I think a point was raised, I believe, I think it was Jason Anderson saying, why are you bringing these guys in instead of maybe looking to build out like Jacob Green or Ted Pietro or Christian. I think Christian Fletcher was the name he used. My response to that would sort of be, I think they're solid. I don't think this team is so weak at those positions. I do not think that this precludes any of them from getting, minutes if they prove it in training and then go out there and play. I think you'll see Wayne Rooney go out there. I think this team is just so thin they needed to do something, and they needed to go out and get a solid piece. They are still chasing for the playoffs. We'll get into a little bit about coming up what we think these teams' chances are heading in. Do you agree with that assessment, or would you have rather them just keep the powder dry? And
I think it doesn't matter. I think the outcome is going to be the same. If Christian Fletcher proves himself in training, he'll play because the other players, these are not blockable players. Pirani is the only player, we've not talked about him. He's the real, usage of money. He's the real gambit. The other players are just guys. By the way, the name of the player I was thinking of before, Gelman Rivas. That is the player. There were a couple like Gelman Rivas.
Oh, yeah. Now I remember him.
There was like a very loud subsection of the fan base. Like, if this guy just got minutes, he would score double-digit goals. I just look at him. He's great.
Hoya's 7 day, in the words of Van Halen, our approach at the end of window was Panama. I think maybe there was some scouting of the Gold Cup, and maybe there was some and Panama, to their credit, performed well in the Gold Cup. They made a run. I believe it was to the semifinals. I want to say finals. I forget. I think it was semifinals.
Finals, I think, and they lost to Canada.
No, Mexico won. I believe Jamaica was in the final. I think it was semifinals.
There has been too much soccer.
In the
last 2 months. Where if I don't blame anyone for not knowing who the Gold Cup finals were.
It has been. I think this weekend I was just like, dude, man, I am like burnt out. It's like I woke up and watched Liverpool on Sunday. I watched the Premier League on Saturday. Yeah, Kickers started Saturday. I watched a little, and of course I watched the Women's World Cup games, on the replay. And it was just like there's just a lot of, and then of course the Leagues Cup has been crazy. We'll get into a little bit of our thoughts of that. Let's talk about maybe probably the biggest signing of the window of the last half of the window.
For sure, the biggest signing of the window.
Biggest signing of the window is Gabriel Pirani from Santos. He's been on loan at Fluminense, a loan with an option to buy. He takes up a U22 initiative spot. And Jesse's asking a very deep dive into our Brazilian savior and how he will be the answer to all that ails us. I don't know if I can say confidently about that. I went out. Thank goodness that the Brazilian League was on CBS. I was able to maybe catch a little bit. It has actually been a little bit. I think I watched his game prepping for the show that would be the next weekend, and then the taxi situation dropped, and that all changed. But what I can recall correctly, so he's going to be, from what I gathered, he is a player that will be willing to go on the dribble. So he's willing to take guys on. I feel like maybe this team looked and said, we look at what Ted Kudu-Pietro can do. Can we get somebody else that maybe can do those types of things? And I think if you're looking at this team right now, what they've really been missing, and why I think Benteke has been struggling, is that there isn't anybody on the ball that's able to attract attention. There's nobody else. Everybody just know Mark Benteke out of danger, and basically tell their other players, go try to beat us, basically. Go you. Pedro Santos, go you, Gabriel. No, I'm thinking there's some other players out there. Ruan, Nahar. You guys try to beat us. We're not going to let Benteke beat us. And when the team played well, when Benteke was scoring, it was because they had a guy like Ted Kudu-Pietro that could come on, maybe attract a little attention, and then maybe the defenders are collapsing in on him, and then suddenly Benteke is finding himself open. So I think maybe that's what they're maybe looking for out of this guy. His passing, I believe I looked at his F-brief, his progressive passes and other stats like that were not great. I don't know. I'm maybe slightly curious to see where he fits in this team. Are you going to see him line up with Matthias Klick, maybe with him being a little more of an advanced player? Will you see him pair up with Benteke and sort of be, the team sort of shift from from a 3-5-2 to a 3-5-1-1 or something like that? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what opening day is going to look like. We're assuming he's in training. He has his visa. I don't know if he's been spotted. You would think the team would want to maybe get that out there. We'll see what happens on the Thursday call as to whether he's there. We are presuming that one addition to the team. It's an addition from injury. Hopefully, it will be Ted Kudu-Pietro out there. John, give me overall thoughts on the window.
On the window, okay. I was like Piranha kind of. Also, I think we should say that on the way out, we didn't cover that yet. Taxi, obviously, the other one, but also Victor Paulson.
Victor Paulson.
Victor Paulson, who already played this weekend, I believe, and they lost 5-0. I think.
Yeah,
he got like a 4-point something on FootMob.
Let's shift. Sorry, let's shift the overall. I do want to mention that. So Victor Paulson got traded. I think there were some people in the fan base that were maybe a little bit upset about this. And I can understand absolutely why. I think he was a player that endeared himself.
I also know two women who think he was sexy, so they were also a little upset that he was.
I think he's a player that definitely endeared himself a little bit to the fans. I believe during a really awful performance, he sort of came out and apologized to the fans. I think it was after one of the Philly games, if I recall correctly, and he was just like, "I'm sorry." So definitely a guy who.
Sorry.
What's that?
I said, "I'm sorry. I apologize. You suck. I apologize."
Yeah, and I think Quazak 168 Canals greater than Victor. I think that's a question. I think the position that he was thrown into, kind of that third center back. I think he did show some good things about when he was out there. I will say he was also making an exorbitant amount of money. He was a DP, if you recall correctly. He was sort of under that limit where the team could basically go and had to pay him as a DP with the idea that he would be bought down. I think the overall vision for him was that he was going to occupy that number 6 spot and kind of be that sort of talisman in the midfield. Became very clear that he was not up for that, and the team needed more than that. And so I think, his shift to center.
He's a luxury player they couldn't afford.
Yeah, and he was luxury. This team needed to go out and get some difference makers to fill other holes. They needed the roster spot, the international slot in particular. They needed, and I think that if that was a player that if you looked at objectively and not subjectively, which I know is a hard thing to do, you would have said, yeah, that's a player you probably cut some bait with, particularly with how good Pines is. I think Pines is what forced this move too, because he looked really good. So he occupies that spot and he's cheaper. And you've got Brendan Hines-Ike back fully healthy. He's been Brendan Hines-Ike. I don't think there's been any really drop in his play, and Derek Williams has been excellent. And then you still have Steve Birnbaum. So you look at those four and you're like, yep, I think it's appropriate to drop him and make some space.
The injuries around the team and the depth problems where the positions were, that was what it was about. He was making too much money. He was a luxury that they couldn't afford. As you ask sort of what the overall view of the window is, I feel like the net is very the same. Mm-hmm. I don't believe we've improved. I think we have more bodies, but I think that they're not necessarily for sure improvements. I would have liked to see maybe some internal MLS moves, sort of like a sort of very projectable players, so you know how they're going to adapt for MLS because they've already been in it. And I think based on comments that Wayne Rooney made a number of times, like I think that was the intention. I think there was some plans to make inter MLS moves and trades, and teams would say this player is available, and then they would inquire and they would say no, just kidding, they're not available. So that's surely frustrating. So I think are we better or worse? I think that there's Ted Kudibiatra coming back, and Pirani hopefully being at a level where he can contribute right away, because we need that. He doesn't, unfortunately for him, he does not get the opportunity to acclimate slowly over time. He's going to get thrown right into the fire because of Taxi leaving. So hopefully he's ready to do that when the time comes. I don't think we're better. It's possible that we're worse a little bit. Taxi had 6 goals this year. Benteke is the leader. I think he has 8.
8. 9. Yep. 8.
But he hasn't scored since June. It's August 14th. He has very little confidence. Unless you count the Leagues Cup, which I do not for this purpose.
So I'm saying there's been a little bit of a break. The team's been in a little bit of flux, obviously.
There have been at least 6 league games since June
fair
1st or whatever it was. So it's enough to be concerning that he's not put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now you don't have it. Now there's not a secondary scorer that's there. So it's inevitable. Like there's going to have to be players that step up and perform better than they have this year if this team wants to push. But I guess the question that we can sort of ask ourselves is like, what is a reasonable expectation? What are we expecting for the rest of this year?
Yeah, I think DC Ulysses asked, is there a realistic chance of a decent free agent pickup this season? I believe I decided to do a little bit of Googling. I was like, what's the latest on Jesse Lingard? Because he was released by Nottingham Forest, I believe, a while ago. He was a player that was on DC's discovery list. I think he maybe got swept up in the Wayne Rooney or in the Lionel Messi hubbub, and he was apparently training over in Miami. Is he a guy that you bring in? And, it's going to be hard for him to really look at, or does he maybe look at, I would say maybe he maybe looks at Saudi Arabia as well. I think that's going to be the real, any sort of big difference maker that's going to be a free agent. You're going to look at like a Jesse Lingard. And then there's going to be the question of there's no way you can compete with Saudi Arabia. So does he take the money and go to Saudi Arabia? Because I bet if he called up, they would find a team to put him in, or do you look somewhere else? And do you even want to do that at this point? What do you really? Does Jesse Lingard make this team better? Yes or no? Like, what do you think? Maybe I don't know.
Maybe better than it's possible. I think it's. Yeah. I think the challenge here from a roster building perspective is you don't want to commit long term to a player that's unattached in this particular space. Even if it's Jesse Lingard, I think you would, in a perfect world, like a 6-month option to buy, basically. But what he's likely to be able to find is he can get a 3-year contract in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
that would be the smart move for him from like what offers are on the table. So, I would put chances of us finding a free agent signing that's a difference maker like very, very low. Yeah. 2%. I think it's unlikely. I think we're going to have an open spot.
Yeah. And then says FB gently with the chainsaw. What are you looking for in a taxi replacement? And what are realistically going to get? What are you realistically going to get? I think this year, it's going to be, in my mind, it's probably Jesse Lingard or nothing. If he wants to come, he wants to be here. I'm sure Wayne likes him. Wayne's a player I'm sure he's a player he knows. I think the question is going to be. I think the real question is going to be if DC thinks Wayne Rooney will be here next year. Maybe you go out and you get Jesse Lingard, and if it doesn't work out, then I'm sure you can find a way to get rid of that contract, mutually terminate it, offload it, find something else. Honestly,
mutual termination. I was just going to say, when you were looking at I was like, when you were asking about free agents, I was like, I know a free agent. He's a creative midfielder. He could score from distance. He doesn't have a club right now. He's a national team starter. I wonder what Ravel Morrison is doing right now. I wonder if he's available to play for DC United.
Maybe. He's unregistered. They could just bring him back on and register him again.
I would like to pay. This is an open call. DC United staff, I know some of you listen. If you want to give me an off-the-record understanding of what the hell actually happened, you pick your award. I would really like that information. If you don't want me to say it on the show, I won't. I just really, for my own edification, want to know what happened. What was the conversation that happened between him and the club where they were like, you know what? F off. Here's your money. We're not going to register you. Just hang out. It's fine. We would need you. It would be great if you were on the team. We could certainly use you. You played almost every game when you were here last year. You scored 3 goals, which is more output than any of our midfielders right now. I would love it. We'll never know. It's like it's memory hold. It's going to be crazy. I would hit me up, staff. Be friends with me.
Brandon Zebron asks, does a healthy Teku Pietro immediately take over the taxi spot, or is it Roberta, Pirani, or Ferrater? I don't know at this point. I think it's going to be a question. For all we know, I do not know if Pirani has his visa yet, and we don't have Goff here, who usually has his ear a little more to the ground, maybe on those types of things because he's at the World Cup. So I think we'll find out probably Thursday or whatever the next media availability is. Who's ready to go, who's not. I think and the question is how healthy is Teku Pietro? I think we heard it was a few weeks. I think we thought by Leagues Cup he'd be ready, but that wasn't the case. Now it's been an additional 2 weeks.
I bet he's ready to go. I bet the Leagues Cup sort of break gave him the. We don't know if he's fully running in training. That's the thing. Sorry. The question is does he get turned the keys over for that spot? If he's healthy and had minutes, I would think he would. I think it's going to be a rotating door for a little bit of Pirani, of Ted, of maybe Nigel in that spot. That's not really his strength, but
you have to ask too. What do they think Pirani's role is going to be? Is he going to be in that 3-man midfield? Is he just going to slot right into Lewis O'Brien? He's a very different player from Lewis O'Brien. Or does he shift up? I'm willing to bet the original thought process was he would slot right into where Lewis O'Brien is, with the idea that Taxi was going to be there. Right now, Taxi's not there. So the question is, where, do you push him up higher? Do you move him around? Where does he fit into this team? We'll see. It's going to be, we know like Benteke is going to start. His partner, I think, is going to be a bit of a mystery heading into this game. And I think also maybe benefits the team a little bit, because I think it does bring a little bit of unpredictability. So we'll see how it works out.
I didn't get to answer the earlier question about what I would like to see in a replacement for Taxi. I think if you think Wayne's going to be here next year, the best thing you can do is talk to Christian Benteke and say, who that you have played with enables you to be your best player, like your best self. What players have you played with anywhere in the world? You're here for another year and a half. We want to get the most out of you. We want to give you the best opportunity to succeed. Give us some names. And maybe they've done that. But I feel like you've got a finite time. You've got an asset that you're trying to maximize. But I mean, Julian Gressel would be the name, and he'll be a free agent at the end of this.
I wonder. They talked about Vancouver wanting to move east. I wonder if there was maybe we already went out and signed. I wonder if there was maybe an attempt to maybe make up and say, "Hey, you want to come back here?"
They better send a damn basket to that Columbus address and be like, "Listen," because he's a free agent next year.
Yeah.
He'll be an MLS free agent. I think he'd go anywhere in the world on the East Coast other than here.
I think if Casper's gone, maybe you see him come back. I bet he knows who the genesis of this move was. I think everybody does. I think that would be the one thing. I gotta tell you, I don't know how you're talking about on the chat about how Casper's seat is in stone, like he's going to be there. I'm not so sure. I'm thinking it feels very weird at the team right now. I'm not so sure. But
for sure. I remember someone was saying this in the Discord, like the vibes feel extremely off. The Taxi thing, I don't remember even talked about it. The guy that got fired.
Shoot, we completely glossed over that.
I mean, Ravel Morrison being non-employed employee of the team. There's just been a lot of stuff this year.
I don't know how in an ownership you can look at all of this and think that this is all like, no, we just need to give him another year. I'm just like, he's shown. I mean, he has shown. I think the biggest problem is particularly this year, apart from everything else, is Wayne Rooney came into the building, and I think there is and it's still to this day. I think Wayne has done an excellent job this year, considering how bad things are. I think he's proven himself to be a decent manager. I just think right now it's who's directing the club. Is it Wayne? Is it Casper? I think there's a power struggle going on. And I think it came out in that article when I still go back to that day when I think it was, I believe it was Pablo that put out that the speculation was that Casper was going to be kind of he's the guy who knows the spreadsheet. And then it was like, Goff was like, no, he's still in charge. I'm still director. I'm still in charge of this operation. So I don't know.
That was a direct quote from Dave Casper through Steve Goff to respond to that, by the way. I'm still in charge. I mean, he is still in charge. Yeah, I think that was Brian, by the way, saying that. I think his seat is I think it's not hot. I think it's warm. I would say that, Wayne has proven himself in some ways a good manager. I think that the thing I've identified is a lack of leadership within the player ranks. Like who is stepping up? There's Steve, right? Who's accountable to the media? Who's in a position where he will talk about sort of what's going on with the club? It feels like there's just a giant vacuum. And everyone is just kind of there filling time. And there's no one that has been there for a long period of time. It's a team in transition. The young players who may be here long term don't feel like they are in a position to speak as much. There's no Bill Hamid on this club anymore, right? Andy Nahar is not an outspoken individual. The team is just in this weird sort of limbo. It's reflected on the field, and it's reflected sort of in vibes and just the way that the team carries itself. So, you know,
I go back to I sat and watched Philly just bring on guys. Yeah, they brought on a guy they drafted out of Drexel. They didn't even draft him. They drafted by another team, and then they played on their youth team. And he comes in and scores the winning goal against Querétaro to take this team to the semifinals of the League Cup. Against, they will be hosting Miami. And, we'll get into the Leagues Cup review. DC didn't have a bad Leagues Cup. I don't think they did about as well as you could have expected. Better than expected, to be honest. Yeah. But, I think you look at what they did, and as a club, and I talk about them a lot, and I'm probably some fans are tired of hearing me about it, but I just look at that and I say, like, they have an identity. They know who they are. They get absolute buy-in from everybody up and down that roster, and that the difference that makes is they are the first MLS team that punches above their weight. Well, maybe Kansas City did it for a little bit too.
Yep, for sure.
But they feel like something that is sustainable, that can just keep going, because they have just created this pipeline. They can just keep pumping in players and pumping in new players. They sell, Paxton Aronson and Brendan Aronson. We got two other guys we're just going to throw right in there. And I look at DC and I'm like, wow, we've got we got talent that looks promising. The guys that are coming in, Christian Fletcher, Ted Gudapietro, Akambone. And it's like, this is actually this is like any other year you would call this like a golden generation of talent, of young talent in the team. The problem is you got to compare yourself with a lot of other teams that are doing a lot more and doing it better. And Philly's one of them, right up the street.
It's the change in platform, right? Like, we have talented players too, but those players in Philadelphia are coming into a system that's been consistent, and it's a play style that's consistent, and expectations that are known, and leadership that is unchanged. So they're able to know what's expected of them, and then the rest of the world is already looking, because there's a proof of what you're going to get out of these players. If you buy a Philadelphia Union player, you know what you're going to get. We have Kevin Paredes, who I believe, when he's out of his injury situation in Wolfsburg, I think is going to get more of a chance this year. Mm-hmm. But I think you got to keep banging that drum, because any team can be the Union, right? Because it's not money, it's intelligence, and it's committing to a vision and sticking with it.
We are when they announced that they were breaking down the sort of the regions, or I think DC had a monopoly on the sort of Northern Virginia market, so to speak, down to Richmond, I think, and when MLS announced they were doing that, DC was one of the clubs that, a lot of people who are in the know of the academies that were like, that's an area we can go after. That's an area that's talent rich. And I hope it spawned something, because I think it did spawn the team to make their academy free, to put the development in there. But I mean, it's got to be more, and they got to have develop those. One thing Philly did, that's they have their academy team, but they sort of developed a good relationship with all the other academies out there, and made it sort of a more cooperative atmosphere. I mean, what they did is fantastic, and it's like, I know DC can be that. We're putting the bare minimum, maybe a little bit extra, maybe like a little extra than bare minimum than we used to now in academies and developments. We have a academy director that is running things. We're doing all of those things, and we've still produced some pretty good talent. And it's just like, man, if you just turn it up a little bit, you can build something. And I mean, I think what Philly does is Philly shows that you can still win in this game. I think this is going to be a fascinating game coming up in the Leagues Cup. You can have Philly versus Miami, because the one thing you can look at with Philly is say, well, yeah, they've been successful, but they've also not won anything other than a supporter shield in a weird 2020 season. They've made MLS Cup finals, Eastern Conference finals. They've lost to teams that have played better. I would sit here and say, well, that's sure as heck better than what DC's trying to do right now. Like, I would trade what DC has with what Philly has in an absolute heartbeat, even with all the heartache and everything like that, because they're still putting themselves in positions to go out and win those games, and very nearly win those games. They were a header from a DP away from winning MLS Cup last year and being the talk of the town. I think actually I think they will get over the hump and actually win this Leagues Cup thing. I think they have enough behind them. I think, and also rumors that Messi has rolled his ankle, so that might be the excuse. I don't know how much we want to get into Leagues Cup. I know we've kind of deviated a little bit. win over Montreal, I think was a gutsy win. Made the finals, and then of course their 3-0 loss to Pumas was not so great. They for what it's worth, how bad this season's been, they seem to have set out to the idea of like we are not gonna lose. We may not beat Philly. We are certainly not going to lose to them this year, because now they have 2 games where they have not given up a goal, 2 0-0 games. Obviously, a loss in PKs, hard done. I felt really bad for Chris Durkin, who actually I thought played an excellent game against Philly. If I had to point something out, I think he was really good in that game. He unfortunately misses the PK when the team had it, but who knows what would have happened if this team had managed to win that game. I think they would have probably then gotten smacked in their next game, but hey,
undoubtedly,
yeah, undoubtedly. Would they have played America? I think was the next game America, or was that? I can't remember. I have to go back and look.
I'm not sure.
But sorry, never mind. No. What am I saying? Nashville played America. That was a crazy game. I feel like I haven't had Philly played them. Anyway, let's see that. Should we go to some? Should we talk about any of the upcoming schedule? Like, what are we looking at? I mean, you look at it, and it's not infeasible. This team can make the playoffs.
And I'd say it's a coin flip either way, and both of them are extremely believable outcomes.
You've got
just missing and just getting in are seemingly just as likely.
I will feel overjoyed if we get 7th. 8th, 9th would be nice, and I mean I'm expecting 10th, 11th. We'll get in a little bit. We'll get into a little bit. We have some questions coming up, so we'll talk a little bit about that. DC United Kingdom, if you had 3 wishes for DC on the pitch or off it, what would they be? I would say take the top 3 things that Philadelphia Union done, and there you go. There's my answer.
Easy.
Okay, I'll maybe give a little bit more. Off the pitch, I think they are trying to do a better job. I when I was at the Kickers game, there were some people who are involved in some of the supporter groups that visited down, and they were kind of talking in. The team apparently really wants to try to recreate Lot 8, and I think I mentioned this in my post, my tweet. I'm still going to call it a tweet. Screw you, Elon. I said in my tweet, I said, I think you got to admit that like Lot 8's done. It's not going to exist, and so now look to build something new. Try to do something different. Whether it's open up some sort of common area, I don't know. Yeah, but you can't just keep trying to recreate Lot 8 because you're not going to do it. You're going to fail, in my opinion, if you try to do it. So
if they try, I would go. If they figure out a way to do it in a way, like if they bust over from RFK, I would do it.
Yeah, that's my only option. It's like do Lot 8, figure out a way to rent out the parking lot out in the
literally in Lot 8,
in Lot 8, and then just have some rent some buses and have it go over. So that would be the only way. Sorry, I want to make sure you get your answer in. So
I would say new GM, a new coach with a 5-year contract would be 2 things that I'd want to see off the field. What do I want to see off the field? I would say I would like to see DC United be the largest spender in the academy space in the entire league, other than maybe, whatever Arthur Blank, any of the like super rich guys. If the money is no object, folks will put out. We're eighth in the league in spend on roster. I would like to see us be number like 3 in sort of academy spend, because it's a lot of lottery tickets you're buying, right? I mean, there's a couple players in the academy, in the MLS Next Pro team, where they are, 2 of them were in the All-Star game competition. They're U.S. National team youth players. Get more of those lottery tickets. Some of them are going to pan out and be a team similar to Philadelphia, to Ted's point, that is willing to allocate a number of minutes each year to those players, no matter what. Christian Fletcher, for instance, should get any minute that Eric Hurtado gets, and more, honestly, because you have to look at, how big of a deal is it if we make 9th place versus get Christian Fletcher 500 minutes this season, so he's actually in a position to contribute next year. I would argue that it is more important to develop an asset for the future than scrape into the play-in game. So a plan. I think it's a replay. If you've been listening to this show for however many years we've been doing it now, we've asked for a plan. We've asked for something that is understandable and repeatable. And I don't expect the casual fan to be able to explain it to anybody, but we should be able to. We should know exactly what the plan is going to be. And it's not just, we've had conversations with people on the team. It's not just hardworking players that are technically savvy. Like that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. It's about what is the aspirations of the team? Where do they want to be in 5 years? And if they're, what are their metrics for success? And tell me those things. I'd love to know those things. That's the way you get buy-in in your hard court, outside of just general feelings and I have to love this team because I love this team. That's what I want. I want to know. I want to be able to explain to anybody like this is what this team's about.
I just want to see the team. And I know like Wayne Rooney was maybe a drastic move in some people's eyes. I don't really see that as a drastic move. I see that as we have to desperate. Yeah, desperate is a good way to put it. I would love to see this team. First of all, I would love to see them say goodbye, Dave Casper. Thanks, but no thanks. And I would also honestly, at this point, I would love to see them say, okay, we've got here are the young players. Here's your Chris Durkin. Here's your Taxi Fountas. Or sorry, Taxi Fountas. Your Teku Pietro. Your Teku Pietro. Here is your Christian Fletcher, your Akambone. Honestly, if I was the owner and we signed a new contract for Steve Birnbaum, I would be shaking. Like, what are you doing? Do we at least get?
They've got to have somebody that can speak to the media and be accountable because there's no one else that's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And again, I don't think Steve is as bad as everybody said it is. But it is what it is with that situation. I would like to see this team hand the keys over to somebody who's like, here's an identity. Here's what we're going to do. Honestly, like I am at the point where it's just like, and I know this is coming off somebody who is not hot right now, but a Bob Bradley comes in. The situation in Toronto, I think we're learning, is way beyond. Bob Bradley is not at fault here. I'll say that much. Bob Bradley's not at fault here. This is a ownership group that basically tried to just like shoehorn a lot of things in with big time players and personalities that basically have decided they're bigger than the club. And I think Bob Bradley is still a fantastic coach. I think he still does a good job. I'd love to bring him in. I'd love to see us go out and do what Columbus did. They went out and they poached Wilfred Nancy from Montreal. They just went up and grabbed him. I would love to see us go down and grab Oscar Pereira from Orlando. Call Oscar and say, hey, we got a project here. We want you to be the chief part of it. You're going to be able to build something that you want. You're going to build a team that you want. Talk about a front office. You talk about a front office that's been terrible. You cannot have go far to find out how bad Orlando was at the start of their season. No direction. Similar to DC, they were signing Kaká. They went and signed, and then they got accused of tampering with No Chirino. That whole thing. I mean, they were a disaster. The Jason Christ, the collapses, the absolute farce that was Kyle Laren's whole situation and contract and the option and all of that stuff. I mean, they were an absolute joke and a mess. And Oscar Pereira came in and righted that entire ship where they have now become. I mean, most of the same guys are still there. So, it's what you need. You need something like that, something that shows that you're serious and that you want to go out and do something. I want this team to go out and do that. So, another question from Loud Adam. I want to get through these. If or when Senior Wayne leaves, who steps up next? Of the current assistants, Shuttleworth, Robinson, Brilliant, or somebody else entirely? Somebody else entirely. It has to be. All due respect to those names, it has to be someone else. It has to be someone. It has to show. It has to be. I really hope if Wayne leaves, I think immediately if you are smart, you say Benteke. Saudi Arabia is probably going to pay you a lot of money. Why don't you go talk to them and we'll release you from your contract? Matthias Klick, love you, but maybe Matthias Klick is one player I wouldn't mind sticking around for a little bit. Just like I got his jersey.
Apparently, Carl Robinson is interviewing for the TFC job.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to.
Maybe
that would be a weird. That would be a weird.
We didn't think Chris Armas was going to get either, and yet he did.
Fair enough. I don't know. Maybe that's.
And then he became assistant to the Stars for 2 Premier League clubs over the course of 12 months.
Walking into that mess, we already saw Matt Hedges show up and then immediately depart for Austin. Immediately was like, I'm out of this mess. So I mean, to me, it has to be someone else. I mean, I'm thinking you've already talked about it. Same idea.
Shuttleworth would be neither of those guys to me scream builder and long term. And even that's the challenge, right? Like even Wilfried Nancy, that's a coach you want for a team you got now, like for a team that's ready to compete. That's the struggle. Bob Bradley also strikes me that way. He succeeded at LAFC building a team, but he also had, from my understanding, like carte blanche to build the team and make the shots and call the plays. So like I don't know. To your point, if Wayne leaves, then you got to think about reloading or sort of not necessarily like strip the team for parts, but like, all right, we need to get younger here and not sign all these like, 1-year deal guys that are, you don't need a Pedro Santos if you're like those type of players we don't need. So I want I want a coach that would specialize in being like, I have a 4-year plan. I'm Jim Curtin 2.0. You're going to bring me in here. We're not talking about the playoffs next year. We're not talking about winning MLS Cup next year. I've got a 5-year plan to take this group of young players and move them to here and sell some of them, and then bring that next group in. And at the end of the 5 years, I want to have sold 2 players. I want us to be comfortably in 5th or 6th place, and I want to have the next level of youth players that are knocking at the door. Someone tell me that plan, I'm buying season tickets.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I would consider it, even though it's a 3-hour drive. Right. DC Ulysses asks, is there a case for optimism? They get into playoffs. I think this team could get, I mean, even without Taxi, I would argue that with Taxi, even in that team, I can maybe attribute one game that they won, and that was in Dallas. That's 1 point, 3 points that he earned for us. Other than that, some of his goals were in garbage time, or they were games where there were others out there scoring goals and making opportunities. The team was already looking to offload him, I think, mostly for performance reasons. Like he was just not the same effective player. He's also, again, the team completely changed how they played when they brought in Wayne Rooney. So I don't think he fit what Wayne Rooney wanted to do anyway. So, I mean, is there a case for optimism? I think if Ted Kudapietro steps up, if Pirani pans out, I think there's a good chance that continues to step up, I should say. Like Ted Kudapietro has already stood up. We directly tie a game that he won, and also a game that he managed to scratch a draw from his appearances. So he is a guy that absolutely can step up and can make a difference in this team. So, I mean, if he continues that or grows into that, then I think, I think absolutely. And then also you look at, if Pirani works out, I think this team could still make the playoffs. I think they absolutely could. I think they've gotten a rest. They've gotten some rest in some of those players. Now you got 12 games. You do not have, I won't say you have an easy schedule, but you don't exactly have a completely far out there tough schedule. Philly is maybe the one game that you look at that's not winnable. And even that's
just took them to extra time.
You just took them to penalties, and you've played well against them. They're the one team that apparently has figured them out. So I don't know.
Sample size of one, and also with
two games.
That's fair. That's
two fair. Games. To both in Philly. So
I would say my only level of optimism is if Christian Benteke scores 5 goals in those 12 games remaining. You need him to be a double-digit scorer for sure, but also closer to 15. You need to be him to be the player that he can be. Yeah. If he's not, there won't be enough goals, and we won't make it. Yeah.
All right, folks. I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for jumping in to the show. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the support we got from almost all of y'all over our decision to take a break. You guys, we paused the Patreon, and some people were like, "Nope, keep charging me. It doesn't matter. I want to support."
We don't know how to do that, so we didn't charge you. We're turning it back on.
Yeah, it's Patreon. Patreon is going back on, but we're here to close out the season. But thank you guys so much for the support you guys show us each and every week. It's what's helped us. It's what's got us mentioned in The Athletic, which I think is something. Even though he didn't drop our specific name, which would have been nice.
Maybe it was not us. Who knows? It could have been anybody. It's hard to say, but yeah,
it could have been.
I want to reiterate. Ted said, I think it was not a. I don't want to overblow the decision, right? Like it's not life and death. It's not. We didn't do anything, but I think it was important for us to sort of game out where we wanted to be, and I was hoping that people would understand that, even if they didn't support it, they'd understand it, and I think most people did. And we didn't stop watching this team through this. We didn't stop loving for against our better judgment this team, and we never will. And we're going to keep doing this podcast until the cows come home. We're what did I say? It's like 600 episodes combined, or it's some crazy number if you calculate everything in and all the bonus episodes and all that stuff. So we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep on doing our thing, and I think it's we ask a lot of this club. I think the good thing I think the break enabled me to sort of look back at who we are and sort of what we've evolved from. And I think that there was a period where we were doing a lot of player interviews. We were very in the loop sort of with what the team was going on. And I think trying to make sure that we were being even-handed in coverage, especially through times of trouble. And I think, we're still going to be even-handed. I think we have been. I think we're much more righteous and our discontent around what this club is long term, and sort of how fans feel about it. People, particularly people who have been here a long time. I think that's a valuable position. I think it's having the knowledge of history, not necessarily the trophies from pre 2006. I mean, those are important, but even since then, even since I've been here, I think it's valuable to look at where we are and where we could be. And to Ted's, go back and check that thread out on the Twitter page, sort of looking at that. I think it's good that there isn't a lot of fan-led media left. There isn't a lot of media in general covering this team. So,
it took a Women's World Cup to basically grind. I mean, this team was, even through its Leagues Cup run, no one was talking about this team. I listened to the Extra Time podcast. They might have previewed it a little bit, but they certainly were not talking about DC. Maybe because of what was going on with Taxi and everything like that. But I mean, it's very clear this team is, and I think it's all we all want it to be. We all want it to be more. I think it's the most important thing for sure.
So the value that we continue to hold is making our expectations clear and our hopes clear about what this team can be. And we're going to get excited when they win, and we're going to get carried away. We always do. Go back 500 episodes. We win 2 games in a row, and we're like, man, championship. But in the long term, I think the value that we have is to say, here's the things that we think are important. Here's the things that the rest of the fans think important. They may not be always the same thing, but we're certainly going to use whatever little platform we have to demand more and to expect that the team lives up to its whatever it stood for in the past, and also makes a good faith effort to reward the people that spend their time, money, and energy on this club, even though it hasn't won a trophy since 2013, even though it's not the glory days anymore. People are still here, and I think what we do here is share that voice with the people who are listening, the new folks, to understand sort of you deserve more. You don't even know you deserve more if you're a new fan, but you do, and that's what we talk about.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. I mean, I grew up watching this team as a kid, and I've seen the glory days. I've seen the days, the sort of second era of greatness, and I just want it back. And we will continue to call out the team, and we don't think that they're doing that. And I don't know if we're being listened to. I don't know if Jason Levian will suddenly turn on this podcast and listen to us.
Why would you guys like a job? Why would you do that?
But hey, I will say when he does get around, he suddenly sees things, he listens, and I think 2018 was a good example of that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out some of the articles that were
or
written.
our first 10 episodes of our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, all right, guys, I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're so glad to be back. We're going to come back. We're going to talk some Spirit. So definitely stick around if you're into that. Again, patreon.com/RQFDs. Start donating to the show. It's great stuff. We're really working on getting the content out there for you guys. John's Thursday show might be returning. Maybe I'll step in. We're definitely going to try to. It'll happen.
I'll be back from my travel. There will be something I'm talking about on Friday.
Great. So definitely check that. Join the Patreon if you want to get that early analysis and preview. Setting yourself up for Sunday when DC United plays for the Red Bulls for the first time this year, which is crazy.
That's insane.
MLS scheduling is nuts this year, and that's one
the
of the
Atlantic Cup rivalry must be respected. MLS must be respected.
All right, folks, that's going to do it. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Vamos.
Vamos.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Kindred Spirits here on the Arthur Refugees Podcast Network. Ted here, John here.
Hello.
We are back. We took a little bit of a hiatus. I think we planned to maybe give the Spirit a little bit more coverage, but it was a difficult time for both of us. But we're back to give you a little bit of thoughts. Also to talk a little U.S. women's national team. We kind of maybe dropped the ball a little bit on that.
We were on national team duty, Ted. That's just what it was. Both of us were called up over the course of this break. And, you know, unfortunately for listeners, there was no Mariana Speckmeyer on the podcast front to come in and secure some points. So we are where we are. If you are watching this live, or if you're not, I guess I am doing this from a hotel room in Indianapolis. Ted is in his freshly air-conditioned apartment.
Air-conditioned.
Just very freshly. But yeah, no, I think we are, we're happy that the national team players are coming back, and we're going to talk about sort of how the Spirit navigated this. I think the last time we had a podcast was looking at the month ahead of how this was going to go, and I think we'll get into it.
Yeah, and I think probably our national team review. I mean, there are so many other podcasts out there. This has been talked to death. We're definitely coming late. I think what the perspective we're going to take is we're going to provide the Spirit perspective on the national team.
We have thoughts about Megan Rapinoe. We have really hot takes.
We'll leave those in, but I think we're going to come from a primary perspective of the show that we care about, which is the Washington Spirit. Let's maybe get in a little bit of the results. Obviously, the Spirit entering the Challenge Cup, tall order, trying to make it through. And I think pretty much any hopes of making the next round or getting into the semifinals were dashed fairly early on when the team suffered a 6-0 defeat to the North Carolina Courage. I think maybe I watched a little bit of the highlights of this game. Just a bad performance overall. And I think maybe a worrying – I think we all kind of went into this thinking – okay, here's a chance for some players to step up, and Ashley Hatch to show, show why Vlatko was wrong. And I'll get into a little bit about what I think about what Vlatko did leaving her off the roster, considering some things that happened with the team. But here's a chance for some players to show out. And I think after this Carolina game, we're like, dear Lord, can the Spirit players just come right now? Like,
wouldn't it be great if they didn't make it very far in the tournament and could come back immediately? The monkey paw curled, and we'll talk about it.
Boy, man, you wish on the monkey paw, man. What are you doing? But anyway, yeah. So bad result. Again, it comes in the Challenge Cup. I think maybe it was a good thing in disguise, considering the next two games. I think maybe it was a wake-up call for the entire team that, hey, and maybe it was Mark Parsons being like, I mean, here's an opportunity for you guys to show me who maybe wants some minutes, who wants some opportunities out there. And you guys once
the Cavalry comes back.
Yeah, once the Cavalry comes back, who's going to be left? You have a lot of players that are on, month contracts, sort of replacement players coming in. That's not a performance that makes me want to really think about playing any of you all. And then they responded. They came out and got a 4-2 win over Gotham FC. Obviously, the biggest story being Ashley Hatch with 2 goals and Chloe Ricketts being the youngest NWSL goal scorer, finally getting off the mark and getting a goal scored. So, and then obviously, I think that was a good win, and that was certainly a good match. But for me, I think the one that was really for me the biggest one was, I think, on the road against Orlando Pride, team they, I believe, did not do well against the last time they played, gutting out a result, and then Speckmeyer with an absolute blast, just an absolute firecracker at the end of that match to pull out a 1-0 victory. Like I said, I think those two games really didn't mean much. They are not games that mean much in the grand scheme of things. But I think they give you a little bit of motivation. Obviously, the women's national team has been eliminated from the World Cup. It would not surprise me if we still do not see them until September, because I think that I think there's still also, I believe, regardless of what happens, there are still like a send-off or celebration game that's going to take place.
Oh my goodness.
I believe that's still in the cards, and that's still going to happen. I don't know if it happens right away or however it happens.
I bet Vlatko is very excited about that. I think he's really excited to get in front of home fans who really want to let him know how happy they are with the performance of the club.
I do not even think that. September 21st against South Africa. So a little bit of a ways away, but very much going to happen. I think you'll have a new coach by then. So
They could bring Ashley Sanchez and not play her again.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that into a minute. But
I just want to say from the results perspective, it's also good to look at that Gotham game as they went down 2-0 in I think like 12 minutes.
That's true.
And then they just went crazy. They just went crazy. And then since then, it's like a switch flipped. You would have thought after the 6-0, the 2 goals that occurred against Gotham early, I think it finally happened for him. It just didn't hit at the start of the 90 the way that maybe Mark would have wanted. But I think that this team is in a good spot, getting those reinforcements back whenever they come, whenever that part comes. I want to talk sort of about what we can take away from this sort of period with the club. Chloe Ricketts is the player, or it seems to be the player that they were very excited about when they signed. And Mark Parsons talked a lot about not bringing her along too quickly, not overwhelming her, not challenging her beyond her physical capabilities as a young person. And the thing that excites me most about her is she has a unique skill set that you don't see a lot in the women's game, where she is an offensively talented player who is also sort of a brawler and will throw her weight around. And players I don't think like to play against already. She'll get stuck in a tackle. She will get yellow cards because she's going to get stuck in. But she also has the confidence to take on players in the dribble. She's going to shoot. I remember at the beginning of her career when she would shoot, like there was no power behind the shots, and it was just she looked every part 15, right? Like that's just how she looked. Well, the work that they've done with her this year, and both in building her confidence and I assume her strength, she's in a really good spot. The fact that now, Ashley Sanchez is still the preferred player in that spot. It's great to have gotten her these minutes in these games and get this confidence that she can be a difference maker off the bench now in a real way, rather than sort of 10-minute cameos, 15-minute cameos, and we're not really expecting much of her. Now I think you can say, we're not going to give you the keys to this club yet, but we're going to expect the fire that you can bring for that however amount of time, and to sort of maybe change this game up if it's needed. I'm excited. These Spirit fans are lucky that we've got this sort of this young player who is not a national team candidate yet. So she's not going she won't miss games. It's nice to have those players that aren't going to go anywhere. But she's looked every bit the part she looks as advertised.
Yeah, and I think one of and we'll get into this to a minute when we talk about, I think, the U.S. women's national team. I mean, one of the discussions that was happening among circles was, how is Rose? We have Rose Lavelle, who's an incredibly talented player, very technical player, on the dribble, creative. How do we go find more players like that? And I think what you see from Ashley Sanchez is one of those players, and Chloe Ricketts is those players are out there. They exist. Like Chloe Ricketts is not she's not an athletic, strong player, at least not at this point. And
I think her low center of balance acquits her well in those battles, right?
Yes,
and she comes out on top.
Those players exist for the U.S. women's team. They just need to be integrated into this roster and be trusted in this roster. That we don't need to be the might or the athleticism that needs to be our main game. So, that's certainly something to get excited about with her. I was maybe a little bit skeptical of her after a couple games. I was like, she looks 15. This might be a long one. I would say from the past couple games and what we've seen, she started to, like you said, get that strength training in, really start to build that up to where she can and start to look more comfortable.
I want her to go full heel. I'm thinking about like the way her play style. I thought Ben Olsen for a second, and then I was thinking Carlos Ruiz. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about sort of like the physicality of the player. Like if she gets also like other teams hating her and trying to like bring her down all the time and getting and sort of like the universal heel that sort of. There aren't a lot of that, right? There isn't that. That is not a role you typically see in the women's game. Who is like the player who's going out to drive other teams insane. I think she has a little bit of that in her. I think that would be an interesting development. in the women's game to have that as that archetype being available to a player to be like, wow, I hate playing against this person. I would very much like to tackle this person. And plus, she has the offense. So Carlos Ruiz is that's my player comp that I think of in my head.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I mean, sort of taking a step back, I mean, those are the things. I mean, we talk about, what makes a successful window. I think we maybe discussed that a little bit heading into this. What would be considered a success heading into this window? And I think what we really said is we want more players that we can come in and make a difference. Because once you removed Trinity Rodman, Ashley Sanchez, and Ashley Hatch from this team, offensively, it was like, I have no clue what to expect from this team. Paige Mateo was a really nice early find, but she's more of a center midfield, hold the ball up, maybe provide a little bit of a linking play. She's not going to be a creative force. So, I mean, I look at players like Solano, I thought also showed well. And I thought she had some good moments where she really sort of, really, and considering what this team had in the draft, and I think what they've gotten out of this has been excellent. They did not have a lot of high draft picks, so it makes me even more excited what happens once this team actually does get high draft picks. I'm not sure what their draft situation looks like. We tried to assume one time and it didn't look, but considering what Mark Parsons has been able to do to sort of find players like Solano and Mateo, I think bodes well for this team moving forward.
I think Paige has suffered a little bit in this period. I think she's a player that is certainly helped by having the national team players around her on the field. I think she sort of became somewhat anonymous in some of these games, so I think she'll definitely be excited to have these players come back.
Having to look for Ashley Sanchez to be the main creative force out there, for sure.
I think that definitely draws attention away from her and allows her to do her thing. Also, Riley Tanner also had a fantastic World Cup. The other players going to come in. I wonder what kind of minutes she can expect. She was a key contributor for Panama. So
yeah, she was brought off the bench and had some moments where I think she almost had a goal. No Spirit players scored in this World Cup, but I would say of the players out there that came the closest, despite having Trinity Rodman there, I think Riley Tanner might have been the closest of some of the games I watched. I'm not saying I think probably Trinity Rodman had some chances. She was certainly maybe next closest or right there up there, but I think she had an excellent World Cup. All things considered, especially considering Panama is not a team that was expected to go far in this tournament. So,
and the goal also in the last game too against who's that against?
France.
Yeah, that was
wild. Also, she mentioned Tori Huster making her return back, which is certainly a welcome sight. I don't know if we really gathered enough data on her to see whether she still has it. So we'll have to. I'll be curious to see what her role is. Is she a player you bring in when you're up 1-0 and you just want to hold the game down and try to keep things settled, or does she weave her way into a starting lineup? Does Paige Mateo lose her spot? I think they play pretty similarly, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I bet she's a sub. I think for going forward.
Yeah,
for the rest of the season, but still, her and Bailey Feist coming back only adds depth in midfield. It's a good thing for this club in the run up.
Yeah. And again, I think the Spirit have slipped to like down the table a little bit, but they are the table is still just as tight as always. So certainly good to have them back in. I'll be curious to know. I don't think we have any details on the returning Spirit players. I know Christy Mewis is currently still in Australia, watching her partner or good teammate or sportsmanship friend, depending on who you ask.
Hopefully, you all get that joke and. Do not send angry letters to the show.
No, we are all in on the joke. I think everybody's in on that joke every time they're posted. It's quite funny. But yeah. So I think I would not expect those players to return. At least for this game. Maybe you'll see them in the next couple games. I'll be curious to see who returns, who wants to maybe get back at it and keep pushing. Does a player like Ashley Sanchez say, nope, I want to get back. I did not get a single minute here. I need to go show the next coach that I'm ready to rock and roll. Does the Trinity Rodman feel pretty confident in her position and say, yep, I think I'm going to take a a rest and a little break here?
Aubrey, come back. Aubrey, come back. Although I got to say, Nicole Barnhart certainly improved. I was negative on her in the early couple games where the Spirit looked kind of lost. She was not commanding her box. She got better. She got better. I think she had a couple years of not playing, and then was immediately thrust into every game. So I think I was probably a little hard on her. But by the end of game 4 or 5, she had it. She had.
I think it's like anything. She still goes out there and makes good saves. I think she had a couple really good saves against Orlando in particular. I think that kept that team in this game. I think obviously the moment I think maybe you're thinking about, I think the second goal is either the first or the second goal for New York is she bumbles it and leaves it right for another player. So certainly I think maybe again, she is 41 years old. Goalkeepers have a long lifespan, but I think maybe I feel comfortable enough knowing if, Kingsbury has a knock and we need to put her into a game. I'm not saying, oh dear Lord, it's going to be, watch out, the things could be bad. If she has to start the whole season, I'm maybe a little less improved on our chances. Not to say she still was solid, but I mean, this is not. Yeah,
it gives you a good sort of case study for why these clubs need a reserve league or something. She can't. A player cannot be expected to go like 4 years between starts and then just roll out, only having practiced and be like, "Yeah, good luck, play in the best league in the world." So her having some starts in between the last 4 years probably would have been helpful to her. But either, to the end, we talked about where we'd like to see this team end up. I don't think the Challenge Cup really mattered to us. We wanted to see this team develop some additional players, and I think we did that. And I think we got some confidence running towards the end, which is maybe the best case. The best case scenario would have been to advance in the Challenge Cup and have some games to play for in that way. But the second best one is where we're at. So I'm reasonably happy. And no major injuries. Savannah Kuhlman tore her ACL for the 5,000th time, I think, but that was in practice. And I don't think she had not really impacted the club so far. So Lena Solano of that sort of group, Nicole Douglas and Lena Solano have certainly been the players who have figured the most. And Lena Solano has been the one that I think was most creatively impactful over this break. So I'm like you said, happy to see her develop some and get into the depth chart.
Yeah. So I think it sets the team well. They will have their next game coming up on the 19th. I believe that's in Houston. I'll have to go back and check just to be 100% certain, but they do play Houston on the 19th. So we'll see who comes out. I'm sure there'll be some press availability where maybe we can get in some questions. Yep, it will be in Houston. So team Houston currently 9th in the table. So like I said, the Spirit, if in case keep an update on the way the standings are, the Spirit are currently in 5th. But they are 2 points back. 2 points back on North Carolina. So there is 2 points between 1st and 5th right now. So it is incredibly tight. This team will have their players back, and I think they will be ready to make a charge. And I think, like you said, the second best thing is I think they gained some depth out of this tournament. They gained play.
Go ahead, sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just saying. I think they gained depth, and I think they gained guys now off the bench. I'm not like. I'm like, well, I think Solana would work best in this situation. Let's bring her out and let's do this. Or let's bring Chloe Ricketts out here. I think this game's a little bit too tight. So I don't think we really knew that coming into this break.
We got an opportunity to know the players a little bit better, I think. I just wanted to draw, you were talking about how tight it is at the top. Last place is 15 points for KC Current in 15 games. I think DC United would chew their arm off for a 1 goal per or a 1 point per game sort of average. Like that does not equal last place in MLS. The league has some serious parity. KC, I think, has turned it around a little, got 2 wins in 5. So for a last place team with only 15 points, they're turning things around. San Diego Wave I'm looking at the form guide basically. North Carolina has turned it around. We talked about them in the beginning of the year, having lost to Bina as being a club that was in rebuild mode and not really competing for it this year. Once again, making a fool of us all is making any projections about any of the NWSL clubs. You will be wrong. Angel City is sitting in 10th. So just, other than Portland being around the top, everything else is a crapshoot.
Yeah. I think you're seeing,
never speculate.
You're seeing the teams start to eke towards the top. But again, it's still incredibly tight, regardless of how you slice it, with these teams. So
one win from 5th to 1 is what tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a fun. I think it's gonna be a fun conclusion of the season once the World Cup gets out. I don't know what the boost. I don't think there's gonna be maybe much of the boost that the NWSL wanted. But
I would say maybe a negative boost. I think there might be like a Hopefully they didn't run too many ads about NWSL during the World Cup. They should want to separate themselves from it. Like, oh, I don't know about that. All we know is there's a league in the United States, so you guys should watch it. I don't know about what just happened for the last month.
But to say that they still have the Olympics coming up next year, I think you're going to see a different national team. I'm still, I feel like there was a lot of fatalism around the U.S. Women's National Team. Let's get into it maybe a little bit. A lot of people talking about how, oh man, this is the end. The United States, and I was quick to remind people. I guess the women did go out and they made semifinals back in '99. But I mean, I was looking. I'm like, this team has had moments where they were very much not invincible. And those moments came, 99. They didn't make a World Cup or win a World Cup or make a final from, they won it in 99, and then it was 01, 03, 07. And then finally in 2011, they remade a final. I think they won some gold medals in the middle of that. So, certainly they were good there. But I mean, this team has had moments where they did not have good, I would say good or convincing World Cups. It does feel a little different. It does feel like, I think from this World Cup, we've seen a lot of teams struggle too. Canada comes off a gold medal. They get completely bounced out. Brazil gets bounced out in the group stage. France, also ends early. Germany also, I think, had it even worse. So, I mean, we're seeing a changing tide. And I think what really struck me about this Women's World Cup is I think a lot of other countries have started to realize that, well, the best development is still in the U.S., and we can go out and we can go find players that have grandmas who were Irish, or grandfathers that were or Panama, or I think in this case, I think in Riley Tanner's case, a parent that was from Panama, and we can say, look, we know you're not going to be on the national team. How would you want to come and maybe go to a World Cup and play that way? So I think we saw that was all across the board, and it's still something that has happened. I think you're seeing a lot of countries look at this as sort of a shortcut to getting high quality talent in and winning. And I think there is some controversy around it. Going after Riley Tanner probably doesn't know the struggle that a lot of these Panamanian girls have brought in, but I think she sounds like, for me, she came in with a really humble attitude.
Seems like they're glad to have her. I think, naturalization is nothing new in the men's game.
Oh yeah.
And I think this is certainly a very reasonable way to expect. I mean, Riley Tanner, they're not bringing in ringers. Marissa Shiva and Riley Tanner from the Spirit are both players. Riley Tanner has gotten like 5 minutes for the Spirit. Marissa Shiva has become a contributor. I think, we'll talk about the U.S. specifically. The pundits are saying a lot of stuff that is true, a lot of stuff that's not true. I think it's undeniable that the rest of the world is getting better. I think you can say whatever you want about what that means for the U.S. I think to all the clubs that you just named not making it out of the group stage or not advancing, who are overwhelming favorites, tells you that the variability that it's increased means that the overall floor of the teams that are making, other than there's been a few that were pretty bad, but the floor has raised. You're getting professional outfits because you're getting professional leagues across the world that are taking it seriously. Mm-hmm. I think it's good. I'm not tremendously listeners of this show, both of this and United 96 will know I'm not a huge national team fan or aficionado or follower, but like, I think it's more exciting in the sort of neutral position that I'm in, and Ted pointed out that it's not been this way forever, but in recent history it has been. I think it's more exciting if the club doesn't enter every tournament as the overwhelming odds-on favorite, where if they don't win the championship, they failed. Like I think it's better overall for the game that that there's stakes. You're going in, you're saying, we didn't do it last time. We got new players, we got a new coach, we got a new system. Who knows? We're gonna do our best. I think that will also obviate some of the criticism that people felt about whatever the mentality was going in, if they thought that players like, we're gonna get this in a walk, because we have gotten it in a walk before. Now you haven't. So now that's out the window. That can't be either a mindset or a perceived mindset, because it's gone. Invincibility cloak has been pierced.
So I kind of I think there were some parallels I kind of felt about this tournament that I think were in the air when this team qualified in 2015 and they were heading into the World Cup. I think, you looked at Megan Rapinoe is a legend, and I'm very sad that this is kind of the way she goes out. There are a lot of people out there that act very disingenuously towards her. By the way, the Fox Sports coverage has been the worst thing about this World Cup. There are good people there doing some good work. I love JP Dellacamera. I love some of the color commentators that they've hired. The studio work with Carly Lloyd and Alexi Lawless. And then that dude goes on X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it right now and just says some of the most absolutely awful stuff. I mean, I think I sat through like analysis, and there were some people there that were providing some thoughtful analysis. They were breaking down, here's how this goal happened. And Alexi Lawless just went off the most unbelievable dribble. Like, it was like he wasn't even really breaking anything down. He was just saying things in the game. And it's just like, I for the life of me, I do not. I want something to come out or something to rip away the rights from Fox, because they are just it's awful. It's terrible. The Qatar stuff was bad. This stuff was worse, and it really did feel like to me with this World Cup, it was just all built around the U.S. women's team, and that's all. And once they're out, it's like, all right, bare bones. We're going to keep the studio. We're going to keep everything going, but we're not going to do anything. And that to me is just like, when I would watch ESPN produce World Cups, yes, the U.S. was still there. They were still, a main focus. When their game was coming up, they would cover it, but they educated you about all the other players. They talked about everything else. And Fox still does that, but it doesn't feel like the effort is there now that the women are out, and they're still like, it's like they don't know what to do themselves. The commercial that they ran was just all women, U.S. women focused. I hated it. I was just like, I hated it. And sort of like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, I get it. And the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal, but it just shows me this is what the entire World Cup's going to be about. And it's not going to be about the fact that this is a tournament of nations of different players coming together. And the U.S. is a part of it, and they're a major favorite, but they're not like the primary focus. And now, they're out in the round of 16. So you have to almost like talk about some of this. And there have been some great games. Colombia versus England was an incredibly fun game to watch. Colombia also, a team, I think that, what I've been most impressed with is that right now it's still very Euro. You have England, Australia, sort of your more perennial powers, but you had Nigeria, and you had Nigeria was a penalty kick shootout away from advancing over England, which would have been amazing. You had Colombia take a lead against England. Like, you had teams that stepped up in a big way, and now we're going to have a new winner of the World Cup. So I just feel like there's a lot more to that. And I don't want to get off on that tangent, but to me, it's just, I feel like maybe I'd be more interested in a lot of the more of the older over the shoulder stuff if it wasn't Fox producing it, because it's just been so bad. And again, the way Carly Lloyd went after the women's team for taking pictures with fans was just so awful. And then the way Rapinoe's been treated by a section of the media run by also the same guy that owns the same network that is also producing a lot of the propaganda we see in this country, and then also owns the sports network that hosts the Women's World Cup. It's been bad. It's been awful. And I feel so sorry for her that this is the way she has to go out. And also the people saying she missed the penalty kick on purpose is just so blindly
Who said that?
Oh, there have been plenty of people that have talked about it. No one's serious, I will say. But like a lot of the detractors, a lot of people that don't like Megan Rapinoe, are the same ones that are like, oh, I think she missed it on purpose. Like, no, she didn't. Stop it. Shut up.
It's dumb. I'm not going to give too much oxygen to the whole thing. I think it was unavoidable. It
felt inevitable, which was weird. It did feel like it was like it's going to happen, whether it's Sweden or Japan. It feels inevitable.
Specifically with her, I think that a player at the end of their career that has, through not a full part of like her, had become polarizing for, and I take it out for whatever it's worth. I thought the dumbest thing about it, like, to your point where you can tell it's people reveling in their preconceived biases. The fact that she was like, the laughing after the missing it, that is so, like, it was so obvious what that was. to anybody that does not been brain poisoned. Like, it's quite clearly like being overwhelmed by absurdity, right? By like the cosmic joke that is the end of her career, and that's the way she's like handling that like horrible thing to happen to her and the club or the team. People who are like like she doesn't care, it's not serious. Like, this is like an intentional misrepresentation that is solely about like your political identity. It's not anything about, and people have said already the annoyance of having people who actually do not like the sport, do not like the team, do not like, and are just opining. That happens, right? That happens during World Cups all the time. Men's, women, all happens all the time. I think, there was, Alexi Lalas was talking about sort of wanting people to be happy about the team, like, be proud of the team. They don't want to, and like, some people don't want to have politics. That's fine. But I think there's the fine line. The fine line is like between rooting against someone because you don't like their politics versus just not paying attention. That's an option. Like, in life, I think that's a valuable thing. Like if you don't like somebody, don't don't root for them to fail. Don't watch something just to tear someone down. Just, it's not your thing. Fine. Doesn't have to be. Nothing. Everything isn't for everybody. And I think it's a lot better off when people just let things that they don't agree with, just elide them. Go do something else. Cut your grass. Play something else. But it was to get back to sort of the play on the field. Like, it was after the Vietnam game, a 2-0 squeaker.
3-0.
Was it 3-0?
I think it was 3-0.
You might be right. If you just watch the knives were out for Vlatko almost immediately on player selection with Lynn Williams, Ashley Sanchez. Our axe was Ashley Sanchez. I don't think the rest of the country was as agitated.
Spirit fans were. We were certainly there.
We were mad.
I can understand. I feel like it's sort of a missed opportunity from a perspective that it just kind of felt like Vlatko, and apparently, from what we're told, I forget the player. There's a player that was injured that I think Vlatko really liked, and I think he fit the style he wanted the team to be. I think Vlatko suffered and his undoing. I think, honestly, he is closer to Greg Berhalter than I think a lot of people will want to admit, even though I think people intertwine Greg Berhalter and Vlatko. Vlatko, I think, is even more, it was like, this is the system I want to play. This is how I want to do this. And it was like, there was, once Mallory Swanson went down, it was like not a thought of, okay, how do I shift the team now? Because she was going to be a major part. And she was, for a while there, when she was lighting up, I'm like, oh man, she's going to light up this World Cup. Like, she was, I think if she's out there, I do not think this team gets eliminated the way they do. Honestly and truthfully, she was incredible leading up to this World Cup. But I think he just did not, he was so entrenched in how he wanted to play. And I think what we saw from Greg was Greg shifted things around or did things differently. And so I don't get the comparison between the two, because I think Greg was willing to admit sometimes when things didn't go wrong. And it felt like in this World Cup, it was so clear. The Vietnam game, maybe not, but certainly after the Netherlands game, and certainly after the Portugal game, it was like, this is not working. But it's almost like at that point, it's too late to try to move something up. It was too late. And I just wish maybe, early on, maybe you throw out and Ashley Sanchez, you're not getting much offensively. Try her out there. Maybe give her an opportunity. Give her a chance. Give some other players a chance. I mean, also you look at, I think she brought, was Alana Cook is the younger player, sort of the shock addition. And she left out Ashley Hatch. You know what this team struggled with? Finishing. They actually, I think I saw like a breakdown of their stats between this World Cup and the previous World Cup. They did up until the round of 16, and actually like their average expected goals was maybe a little bit less. They still generated plenty of chances. Like, they still played well. It was just so clear that there was a missing just like killer instinct. And I feel like there were like Ashley Hatch would have been one of them. Ashley Sanchez would have been one of them. He talked about wanting Sanchez and Rodman to develop a better partnership, and then did not play them a single minute. And it's just like, I don't know. It's yeah, it felt like just a bad World Cup. I don't think he was the right one to call. I feel like this was a World Cup where there was an over reliance on older players, and I feel like it's honestly his. I feel like there was a missed opportunity to really sort of move on from those players, and I feel like it should have. It honestly, in my opinion, it should have happened after the Olympics. After the Olympics, it should have been immediately. We gotta start working on the next, and I think it's a tail in, you know. And you look at who. I mean, Megan Rapinoe did not have a good World Cup. She was bad. She was not dynamic. Her service was awful. She did not. She came off the bench, and there were maybe some other players maybe you throw in to do something different. So, and that was I think that was the maddening thing for a lot of people was I think it was like the one sub. I think it was Netherlands and Portugal. He made one sub, and I think Sweden as well. Maybe Portugal. He made some more subs, but I know there were two games definitely that he makes one sub in that entire game.
Ben Olsen-ass substitution patterns.
And that just shows, like, I mean, you bring a roster, you have 5 subs you can use. I don't know. It really felt like this still feels to me like a missed opportunity. I feel like this team could have still come in with the talent. The talent is still there. Anyone, Hercules Gomez talking about, look at our list of top 50 young players or women's players and how many of them are on the U.S. national team. I'm like, dude, just you be quiet.
Yeah, the very scientific ESPN FC ranking.
That was so ridiculous. I was just some of that discourse. Some of that discourse was just so. And it doesn't mean I'm saying that I think that everybody's wrong when they say the world's gotten better. We've talked about it, the world's gotten better. I think the U.S. could still be good. They could still be dominant. I'm curious to see what the future looks like. And there's an Olympics coming up. I'll be curious to see what they do with it.
Do you think it? So Vlatko had no plan B, right? He had one strategy and tried to square peg round hole when he had injuries. Do you think there's anything to the fact that maybe this isn't the case with the U.S. women's team because they seem to be playing all of the time because they make so much money. The federation does, so they got 30 games a year. It feels like. Do you think it's something about international coaching that you don't get enough time with players that you can really have, different systems that you can switch and plug, and you just have to pick one, drill it, and just hope that it works out? Or do you think it's just a coaching failing on this particular case?
I think it's a coaching failing. I think it is also. I think there's something to the effect that this was a coach that the players wanted, and I think based off everything, they earned the right to maybe make that decision. I think they should still definitely have a say, but I think there is an argument to be made. Sometimes what you want is not what you need. In a lot of cases. What I will say, I mean, you don't want to hire somebody that everybody hates because then you get bad situations. But I think there's a middle ground you can find.
You could see the pendulum swing probably here with the federation about players coach versus maybe something else.
One thing to consider is the sort of changing atmosphere of women's soccer in general. In that, I don't know. I think the contract situation might still be the same, where they are on the national team, they still get paid. A yearly salary from the national team, but there is very much a difference in that now they are primarily contracted through their clubs now. Like there's no subsidy going on with the NWSL, and I think that maybe made things a little bit easier to dictate certain things to keep certain players healthy. Now they feel like they probably can't do that because it's like, well, now they have a contract with Portland. Portland's paying them. They want Chicago wants Valerie Swanson out there when she's healthy, out there playing week in, week out. They want Christian Press out there. I think it stems more from. I think we talk about a team in transition. I feel like anytime you try to keep sort of your toes in both waters, and say, well, we're going to be a team of transition, but not too much, you run into issues. And I think that's ultimately the downfall of this team. They did not maybe look at some other options, and then maybe also then try those options in better moments to maybe get something better. I also think, they suffered some catastrophic injuries. I think this tournament's different if Mallory Swanson's out there. So, we'll see. The Olympics are going to be fascinating, and I think this team could easily come out and suddenly, put other players out there and go out and win the Olympics. I think that could absolutely happen. So, and then everything's back, and the U.S. is back. It's the classic GIF of like, we are so back. So, yep. All right. Anything else you want to add to this game? Say just didn't get me minutes. I think that's a shame. I hope the next coach comes in, can see her talent, and she can get an opportunity. Just as a player, you want to bring in a player that can do what Roosevelt does. She can do that. And I think it's an incredible waste of her talent not to be out there. Kingsbury didn't get me minutes. That's probably expected. I don't think Alyssa Nair was the problem, so that's probably going to continue.
Do you think Trinity Rodman has her stock hurt at all going forward with how the team performed in general?
I thought she was one of the better players out there. And listening to the discourse, I don't think anybody's pointing that out. I think actually maybe there's a little bit of disappointment with Sophia Smith. I think Sophia Smith came out, shot out of a cannon, first goal, first 4 minutes of the tournament, and then really her weaknesses started to show. I think you had Trinity Rodman. I think of the Sweden game in particular, Trinity Rodman looked really good. She was one of the better players out there for the team. I don't think her stock is hurt at all. I think maybe you're talking about maybe a player who got her stock hurt the most of the Spirit players. I would say it is undoubtedly Andy Sullivan.
Although her best game of this tournament was the last one.
Yeah. So I think it's a tournament. I think it's going to be interesting what's going to happen with the new coach that's running, because I don't think Vlatko is going to be there. I'm surprised, actually, it has not already been announced that he's gone. Maybe they're waiting to see, honestly, whether they want to keep the director of soccer operations, so they need to go out and hire somebody for that role. World Cup is right around the corner, so it's like you can't even really take a break.
Right.
All right, folks. I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We were going to continue to try to do the show. Wow, we did an hour of this, and we're doing an hour. We're just keep writing along.
That's what happens when you take a little bit of a break. You just have a lot of words you want to get out. That's what we get. You got a lot of words to get out.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Again, Kindred Spirits, check us out. Patreon.com/RHeroRefugees. You get both shows right here all in one feed. All lots of fun. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. We'll check you guys next week. Vamos.